Art World Brazil. This is our first episode. We are proud to have, we have Christina Warner, who's gonna be asking most of the questions. I might ask one or two questions later. We have Christina Warner. I'm gonna let you introduce everyone, but I just wanna give everybody an introduction to her. She's an art advisor. Right now, she lives and works in New York. She began her career at Citibank and later moved on to the Heli Nomad Gallery, and then handling things like Art Basel fairs for them. And then she started her own practice after being part of ArtNet for a while. I believe I've got it right. Christina, you can take it away.
Thank you, Juri. That was very kind, more extensive than I was expecting, but I appreciate it. And I'm glad that you could be with us and joining. I know that would want me to mention that we're doing this as a joint venture between BG Gallery as well as with the Venice Institute of Contemporary Art that you are very involved in and promoting contemporary art, and specifically around the world with this series. And today we're going to be talking about Brazil. And so I am excited to say that we have two wonderful panelists joining us. Gabriela Borgas from KURA. What? Borges. Sorry. Good. Borges from KURA Arte, an art advisory based in Sao Paulo. And she's going to be giving us a little bit of color on the artists, contemporary artists, established Brazilian artists that she would recommend, as well as a few institutions that are she is fond of and also would recommend to someone traveling to Brazil for the first time. But I find that with Brazil, there's so much to cover. It's kind of it's very difficult to put it into an hour. I myself tried to come up with a history, art history of Brazil. And I mean, I could talk about this for 20 minutes, but I'd first rather introduce Frederik Schampers from Nara Roesler. And he is based in New York. So this is a very international stage we have here. And so I would say, Gabriela, you can start, please.
It was muted, right?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Abella Borges. I'm the head of art advising at KURA. And I'm also the Latin American ambassador for Zonamaco in Mexico. And KURA is an art consulting office in Brazil based in Sao Paulo. It was founded in 2018 by Camila Yunis. And I brought here three artists that we think we should keep an eye on. And the first one is Erika Verzuchi, who I think is one of the rising stars of the art world in Brazil. And I'm gonna share here on my screen. I brought up presentation. Can you see here?
Yeah.
Okay. So I chose three artists just to show a little bit of the art scene in Brazil, the contemporary art scene. And I'm starting with Erika Verzuchi, and I brought here some images. And here is it's in Pompidou last year. It was her first major institutional exhibition. And last year, and she was in the Venice Biennale as well in 2017, and the year before in Brazil, in Sao Paulo Biennale, which is the second oldest after Venice. So it's interesting, that's the second Biennale in Brazil.
And how old is Erika, to know?
Erika she was born in 1971, so she's young. And I brought here some images this was the last exhibition at Fortes da Loi Gabriel, and the name was Cultured Meat, Carne Sintética in Portuguese. And since 2013, the central axis of her work is these wall reliefs. So these wall sculptures that kind of establish a complex relationship between sculpture and painting and form and the sensorial expression. It's kind of a tactile experience. And it's in bronze, it could be in papier-mâché or clay, and while combining these references to the art history. So there are some images. I don't know if you wanted to ask something about her.
No, well, I was waiting to see if anyone else had questions. I'm happy to keep asking. I'm just curious, you chose her as the young artist of the three artists you picked. I imagine because of her institutional presence, correct? Or am I wrong about that?
Because Erica, you mean?
Yes, Erica.
Yeah, and I think she's growing here in Brazil. She's like always sold out, so difficult to get a work by her. And I think she is getting in the last years, a very different projection institutionally, yes.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of the sculpture, it's like sort of is it found objects, a mix of found objects, or is it just like a lot of, like, it looks like a lot of stone?
Yes, a lot of stones and bronze. Yes.
Bronze, okay. It's a mix, so it's extremely heavy. I would imagine it's not something that you're going to be able to lift easily, no? I mean, most of her works most of these installation shots that you have, I'm just looking again at them closely. They're fairly heavy, no?
Yes. I think this work's beautiful, this one.
The work is stunning. And that's all what type of paint is used?
In her work, you mean?
Yeah, in her work.
What kind of paint you asked?
Yes, yes.
I don't know, it's different. It depends, because she uses like different clay, papier-mâché, and bronze. So she uses different kind of paints. Yes.
Okay. I was just wondering if whether acrylic or house, it's a oil-based or just out. I mean, just sort of out of curiosity, because she seems like she works is very focused on textiles and texture and. So I figured she'd focus on that detail, or maybe she's more thinking about the weight of the object and the presence itself.
And this one, the cemetery of golden eggs, she uses acrylic.
Okay, that's great.
Well, the second one is Mauro Restife. I really like it. He has the same age as Erica. And I think what is beautiful in his work is the use of this analogic black and white film and this graininess that we can see in the photos here. Then he achieves by pushing the film, and I think this is very beautiful. And he associates his research into architecture and urban scenes, urban spaces, to his personal affective experience at the urban centers. So what I think is beautiful is that he portrays the everyday life, and sometimes is a very humble scenario and a very grandiose scenario. So,
yeah, they almost seem like film stills that I'm looking at right now. Like you have the interior and the exterior that you're showing, and they're fantastic.
And look at this exhibition. I think it was last year at Pinacoteca of Sao Paulo, and it's called Album. And he brought together images of his personal archive, and I think it was like 20 years of his archives, and it was exhibited like alongside the MASP collection and Pinacoteca collection. So it was beautiful. I think it was one of the beautiful exhibitions I've ever been.
Really? That's incredible. How many photos in total do you know approximately? I mean, it looks.
Oh, it's a good question.
I mean, that looks like it could take some time, but the photos, the sizes themselves also range in size. So it's not that he was focusing on, he doesn't do one specific size for his photographs.
Yeah, I think it's 3 rooms. So
Okay.
I think this one is very nice because mix all these works.
You know, it looks like a sculptural installation, just the photograph together. I love that. And then these pieces. It's fantastic. And then,
Well, is there anybody has any question? Does anybody has any question?
for the moment, I think no questions yet. So
Can I ask one?
Oh, sure, please go right ahead.
Well, you said that he uses a grain on the black and white photos.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way you can blow that up a little so we can see it does flatten out the depth of the scene. I like how he's,
Do you want me
like
to?
this one, especially that one in the window. It's amazing. It does something to the composition. It looks very flat.
Yeah, no, it's so true. You lose sight of the background and with that
Yeah.
one, it does flatten it out a bit, yeah. But then you have this one, which is sort of I feel like there's a lot of perspective there because you sort of see it in the background, you know. And the floor itself, I noticed the details of the stones and the floor. So it's,
But is he doing that intentionally to make the grain? Why is he blowing the grain up like that?
Yeah.
No.
it is intentional, Gabriela?
Yes, it's intentional.
Yeah.
It's something he does in all the a lot of works.
It's sort of his characteristic style, no? Like in all of his works, yeah. Okay. So, and then I guess we continue on.
Okay, I chose the third artist, a very, very young artist, very, very young. She's born in 1993. It's just because of this since the pandemic started, we could research a lot of new artists, a lot of new spaces, like the scene is really alive. But 15 days before SP Art was supposed to open, SP Art is the biggest art fair in Latin America. It was canceled, and it went online last month. And there were a lot of new projects, independent projects, and this one especially called attention of everybody, called KURA. It's the first Black-owned art gallery in Brazil. And it's an artist-led organization, and who founded is IGI this year. And it brought a lot of interesting young artists, and one of them is Laís Amaral. And I think she's somebody that we should keep an eye on also. And she was sold out in the fair, and a lot of full collections. She went to a lot of collections, so it's interesting because it's very new, and a lot of projects sprung up for the last 6 months.
Interesting. And this is acrylic. I see that it's acrylic on canvas, and that's most of her work.
Mm-hmm.
And can we scroll back up to see I love the first one of hers that we were looking at yesterday. And the title
is very interesting too, because it's resting homesickness, but in Portuguese it's descansando a saudade, and saudade, I think it's the only word in Portuguese that we don't have a translation. So could
it be nostalgia, feeling nostalgic for home, or is that maybe what it might be? Is that a word? Like I'm close? I don't know. I'm just thinking with the Spanish connection. I was sort of thinking that, but I'm not sure. I mean, I love this piece too. Aesthetically, just looking at it, it's very soothing. The colors, the movement. You know, they're beautiful.
Yes, and also I included some institutions. So if you want, I can send you the PDF and you can share the PDF if anybody wants to take a look.
Sure. I think that we were going to discuss the institutions once after Frederik sort of got a chance to talk about his artists, and then we were going to highlight maybe talking about the institutions and what someone coming, maybe potentially traveling to Brazil in the far future, what they would possibly should do, what there might be you think is exciting to do, and I think we should include the institutions in that. So. We'll let Frederik take over for a little bit.
I'm Frederik, already introduced. I'll tell you a little bit about, very shortly about me, then the gallery, and then the artists. And I'll share my screen when I jump to the artists. When Christina asked me to participate in this panel, it was interesting because it's sort of an introduction of Brazilian art to to not Brazil, which is very close to me because I'm Dutch myself, and I was introduced to Brazilian art several years ago, but I really started working in the Brazilian art field 4 years ago, and it made me move to Brazil. Why the Brazilian gallery Nara Roesler invited the Dutch guy to open a Brazilian gallery in New York? Nobody has given me that answer just yet, but in some way it works, I guess. So I consider myself to be some sort of a translator of Brazilian art to another public, because I also had to translate it for myself first. So I think that is something that could work. But it's been an interesting experience, because obviously I'm not raised with Brazilian art. So I'm still learning myself. And so if I make a mistake, Gabriela, let me know, because you probably know more of some of my artists than I do myself. I can be very honest about that. The gallery, so we are, I am director of the New York location of Galleria Nara Roesler, Nara Roesler, depends on where you're from, how you pronounce it. And it's a gallery that opened in 1989, so quite a while back. It's actually the second venture of Nara Roesler, who is the owner. And some of our artists, like an artist I'm not going to discuss, but Tomi Otake is a Japanese Brazilian artist, has been with Nara for, has been represented by Nara for over 40 years. So some of the artists that we represent have been with the gallery before the gallery actually opened. That's even possible. Then in 2014, we decided to venture out, or to expand the business to Rio, because we realized that a lot of artists from our program are based in Rio de Janeiro. And if you're from Brazil, if you've been in Brazil, I always consider LA to be Rio and New York to be Sao Paulo. So you can see that it's a very different culture and different subculture within Brazil. So it's also a very different gallery, actually, in Brazil than we have in Sao Paulo. Then a year later, we took a big risk and we opened up a small space, actually, in New York. That's when I joined. And we've been moving around the city a little bit, and now we are actually at a very interesting point. We are, especially during a pandemic, where most of the people are downsizing, we're upsizing. We're moving to a new space in Chelsea, in the biggest art district still in New York. And we are opening a new space end of this year, fingers crossed, to present the artists that actually need to have more of an exposure outside of Brazil, because of the rules that Brazil often long time had, and the distinctive history of the country politically, but also art historically. A lot of the art history is kept in Brazil. And I was talking to Christine about this earlier, is that even the rest of Latin America and Brazil is quite, is not even that close knit. It's really two different worlds. So
Sorry, just to interrupt, to tell you quickly, everyone, that I was thinking of a quick summary of art history just for Brazil would be starting at
Yeah.
the cave drawings, even maybe you could go back Spanish colonial 1500s and come to present day, and that could be years before we finish. So I figured I'd leave it to the experts to talk about what we came to talk about today, you know?
Yeah, so so Brazilian art history has been very, well, I don't know if closed off is the right word, but we see it as our task to sort of push a bit more and bring a lot of artists to the American market and European market and even Asia market to help make it into more of a global art market than just Latin American, which is already happening by, you know, the bigger galleries in the United States, but we're trying to help in a very Brazilian way. So I have prepared a little presentation. Let me see if I can share the screen with you. Does this work?
Yeah.
You just see the presentation?
Presentation seems, it might be a little bit big. Is there?
See? Wait, let me just stop sharing 1 second. I just have to see if I can do the view a little bit different. And I will be highlighting 3 artists. I was thinking of doing a young artist, but because everything is so unknown for a lot of people, I even consider some of our artists that are in age-wise not necessarily young. They are still young to the American market. So okay, so let me try again. Sorry about that. Is this better?
Yeah, I mean, can we see the piece? That's just the highlight. Okay, there we go.
So
That's, yep.
the first page. Yeah, so I'm starting with Abram Paletnik. He is an artist that is worth mentioning because if you don't know him yet, you just missed him as a living artist. He unfortunately just passed away due to complications related to COVID-19. Very sad that happened. He was very productive still during his lifetime. He was 92 when he passed away earlier this year in April. And what you see on the screen here is a close-up of one of his more recent works. He was actually, this is an interesting introduction, and I'll try to keep it short, but it's very difficult for an artist like Paletnik. Really short. He's a kinetic artist from the beginning. He was actually, but before he became kinetic, he's painted landscapes, and then all of a sudden he came in touch. He got in touch with mentally challenged students that were making art as well, and they really were not bothered by any art knowledge. They were just painting or doing stuff from within. So that made him, that's a very short anecdote, that made him change his complete idea of art, and you don't have to follow the rules, you can just do whatever you want. So he started, as he had a history with combustion engines, he started to create art that is more like, well, this is the artist, and you can see him behind part of a work that's kinetic. I'm going to go back and forth. This is work that he's well known for. Kinetic works with motors in it. In the 50s and 60s, he created these works, and it's, you might think of Calder, you might think of Miro in a kind of kinetic way then, and you can think of Tinguely, if you know who that is, from Switzerland. Actually, when he tried to get into the Sao Paulo Biennial in 1951, the first Sao Paulo Biennial, he was rejected because they didn't have a category for his work. That's a short explanation of why. But then at the last minute, something fell away and he was re-invited. So he got a room or a place at the biennial, and then he was invited 8 consecutive Sao Paulo biennials after that. And the first time that Tinguely, who's a master at kinetic arts, was invited to outside of Europe, he shared a room in the biennial with Paletnik. This is actually...
Sorry, just one quick question you made me think of when I saw this photo is that with Tangli and also with Calder, their sculptures were mostly made, their discs at least, were mostly made of metal.
Yeah.
And this, I believe he works with wood, or is it metal as well?
Wood and metal and magnets, and he painted on stuff. It's a combination of things, often wood, but even it depends on the time, because he had a long lifespan. Of course, at a certain point he didn't make these works anymore, but he sometimes changed the material if it was damaged. But the real work in the work, what makes it authentic, what authenticates the work, is the motor, because he would make them himself. So the motors are the work. Then this is actually also, it's difficult to show you because I don't have a video, but if you are, oh, that's no longer up, but this is one work. It's two images of one work, and you can see that it changes in color. So basically what this is this idea, but then with light bulbs. So it keeps on changing. Fast forward, this is in a collection of MoMA and was on view at the reopening of MoMA earlier this year. Another beautiful work, kinetic as well. Then he moved on to not kinetic work, but sort of work that you can see the motion in the work. There's a real connection to kineticism, but it's no longer kinetic, it's static. He would just basically cut up wood and using the patterns of the original wood to create new patterns and motions. I think this is a stunning piece. This is from 1964. And then he used, and then he started doing this with canvas, painting a canvas in an abstract way, slicing it up and putting it back together. So fast forward, this is a new work. You can see that 2019, one of his later works. And you can really see that he comes from a kinetic background, but these are his 2D works that he's been doing for quite some time, or had been doing for quite some time before he passed away. This is a view of the work in our gallery in Sao Paulo. And this is another way of creating the same idea, but then with acrylic. And he would do all of the cutting himself. He didn't have a studio. He worked in his apartment in Botafogo in Rio de Janeiro. And what somebody told me is that he worked with, how do you call those blinds, vertical blinds. And if you look through the blinds, you could see the landscape of Rio. So in a way, this is a very abstract idea of a landscape from his studio into the Rio nature, the nature of Rio de Janeiro. So that's Paletnik, 1928, 2020, sadly. We will have an exhibition with him, hopefully in our new gallery in New York next year. Then maybe we should have started with this one because Vic Moniz is probably our most well-known artist around the world. He lives in New York. He's in his late 50s. He's been, I can say, famous for quite some time. It's fun work. It's accessible. It's very well made. It's iconic because if you see this, it's always Vic or it's a ripoff. Sorry if I'm not offending someone. What he does is the following. Oh, let me tell you how he came to New York, because he was actually not from a wealthy family. He was not an artist at first, and then the anecdote is, or the story goes, that he can confirm he's still alive, but there was a fight, and then he broke up the fight in the street. He got shot in his leg, and then he got a sum of money as a sort of a repayment for that, and he used that money to go to New York, and he started his artistic career there. He is well known for reappropriating or attributing artworks from art history into new work. So his work is always a reproduction of his own work, and the reproduction of his own work is always a reproduction of something else or an attribute to something. So this, for instance, is the photograph of Jackson Pollock in his studio, but he recreated this on paper with chocolate sauce, and then he photographed the work, his own work he photographed throughout the chocolate because you can't keep it, and then his reproduction is the final work. And that is something that's sort of a thread through his career. Very prolific artist, and also, as you can see here, in many big collections like Centre Pompidou, Guggenheim, Tate, Victoria Albert's, Whitney Museum, Metropolitan, list goes on. He's a public favorite, but he's also in many collections. So he touches both ends of the art spectrum, if you wish. This is a famous other example, Mona Lisa and peanut butter jelly. I think this is his adoration for the United States, I guess. Peanut butter jelly. Then I thought it would be nice to show this work. This is because we're talking to LA. This is from his series, Pictures of Postcards. And this is sort of an homage to travel. So all of these little cutouts, you can see if you zoom in. Oh, you see that all of it is cut out. They all come from postcards. Sometimes he has stamps on it, like here's a stamp. Sometimes he uses the back of postcards where there's written text on it. And with those things, with those elements, he recreates places that people travel to. So in this case, Hollywood. The actual works are always big. He works in two sizes, large and larger. And for instance, like the small size is 40 by 40 inches minimum. So always big, which is interesting because the elements he uses to create the works are really small. And the work is the actual work is a photograph of the collage that he made with postcards. This is an example of how he creates work. You can see in the lower back, you can see a person standing. This is made with waste from a landfill in Rio. He made a video, documentary called Wasteland, for which he was nominated for an Oscar. And this is, I recommend everyone to see this because it's super beautiful and it explains you what kind of person Vic is. He invited garbage pickers to pick garbage for his project. Then he would use them as models. So this woman is after a land picker who picked this garbage. And then they created works based on famous paintings. And then they would be auctioned off, at least one of the edition, and that money went back to the landfill for the land picker. So the money went back into the project. He does many of those things, creating schools, teaching people how to cook with Massimo Bottura, the famous chef. He has a couple of projects with JR, other artists. He's a philanthropist and a well-doer or a good doer, or I don't know how you say that. Other example of a work, this is a recent work, also beautiful, 10 hummingbirds after Johnson Heed. And then we have, this is pictures of magazines. So he picks everything from magazines and reuses it. This is made with pigment. This is after Van Gogh. And this is a funny one. This is land art made I think this is the United States. Used big machines to create funny images and then take a picture of that land art. So that's the result of the work. That's Vic. He lives between Rio and New York. And his house, which is beautiful, is actually on the border of one of the favelas, the slums, because everybody in the slums knows him because he's always in touch with all types of people around Rio. Then the last artist I want to highlight, this is Brigitte Baltar. This is my young artist. She's in her early 60s, so not in her 30s, but she is definitely young in a way that we have now, with the new space, we're working on her international career. She is amazing. She's a phenomenal artist. And she is also, I mean, this sounds a little bit pretentious maybe, but somebody told me, so I might as well just repeat it. People say that she is sort of the Brazilian Louise Bourgeois. That's a thing to say, but you'll understand when you go through her work that her work is very ephemeral, very much about the body, space and body. You're looking at a close-up of an embroidery. We will show her work at Frieze London. Well, it's not really London, it's Frieze London online, early October. So we'll show a range of her works from the 90s up to recent. She is from Rio, lives in Rio, and I love her work. I really love her work. She is from the 90s. She started working she worked in her house, and her house was a studio. And then she decided also to make her house her work. So this is a Venus sculpture, and it's about space and body. What kind of place do you have? Does your body have within your house, within your home? And she used the bricks of her home to create artworks that relate to the body again. So sort of an inversion. This is the Venus from 1995. This is a sculpture about, she does a lot of performances, video work, documentation of the video, photography, and sculpture and embroideries. This is a work from the same time where she, obviously relates to the safety of a house, but also sort of being encapsulated in brick. So it's about safety and being present in your home. So could be two things. Similar idea, becoming her home, becoming the wall. She created a lot of drawings of nature with brick dust, which I think is really beautiful. Her work is always about small, ephemeral, intimate gestures. This is another work, site-specific, of the wall becoming vertical. I mean, this is open to interpretation, but also a small intervention in her home. And then later, also started in the 90s, and she worked on this for several years. This is called A Coleta da Neblina, which is sort of a collection of mist, clouds. And she would go into the, she would collect things that she interacted with. So this is very poetic. When we walk through mist and we interact with the mist without really noticing it. So she would collect that mist in bottles and store them for a while. And then later on, after she was done with it, she would release it again. And so this is a very poetic, abstract idea of living with nature and trying to make it more concrete. This is a series of 24 photographs, documentation. This is one of her more well-known works, and this was also shown. It's in the collection of the Cleveland Museum, and also shown at the New Museum in New York, I think 13 years ago. This is another work about the House of the Bee. It's called Bee House, Casa de Abella. And she created a sort of a fable around being a bee and having this house that is also your work, your sort of the structure to produce. Also very beautiful and intimate, where she would place herself within this structure of the bee house that she created with fabric, and lay in her own home, recreating that idea. It's very loose, but it's obviously she didn't make honey with this.
Well, Frederik, yeah. I was just saying that this is it's amazing, all of the works you're showing, and I feel that we could talk about these for hours. But I know that Abram, the owner of BG Gallery, just wanted to say two things quickly before we get into questions.
Yeah, wait. Okay. I'm nearly done.
Time? Okay.
So this is really the last thing. Sorry, I like these works so much, so I can just keep talking.
I know. I'm just. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm just trying to make sure we have time for questions and everything.
Yeah, sure. So these are more recent works, and this is something I really want to say, because this is about her getting a bone marrow transplant because she got sick, and this is what she made in the healing process while she had the bone marrow transplant from her brother, which also made her question hybridity between like being male and female, because she had a part of a male body inside her body. And this is a series about nature becoming something else, a body becoming something else, morphing into abstraction, figuration. And these works we will also show in Frieze. Really beautiful. And that I'll leave for another time. And that's it.
Well, thank you. That's fantastic. I know, Abram, you wanted to say something?
Well, firstly, I'm very excited about Brazilian art. This is a great introduction, and I got very excited for certain works from both of those presentations. So thank you very much, both of you. I wanted to show, as part of this series, we're traveling to a new country every week, and as well as connecting with consultants and galleries and collectors, we also reach out and find artists that we happen across the network. So I wanted to present a couple of artists that we found through that. And it's just an interesting overlap between them. One's an artist that we show already, Melissa Meyer, and the other is Sandra Lepage, who is here, and we can cut to her studio, which could be interesting. Are you there, Sandra?
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. I'm going to share screen quickly just to show the work in still images. So Sandra creates dresses and things from recycled materials. And Sandra, I found just from networking online about this event, and I thought it was stunning work. So she's not a BG represented artist or anything. It's just interesting to see what's going on with artists in Brazil. But there was an interesting link to our artist, Melissa Meyer, who also creates out of natural objects clothing. So let's cut to Sandra in the studio. So we can see these kind of in situ. And then I'd just be curious about everybody's thoughts on the recycled materials and fashion in art. Is there something there that's particularly Brazilian, or just a coincidence on what I came across?
Yeah, so this is my studio in Sao Paulo, and what I can show you, one of the garments that are pictured in BG's page on Artsy. This is one that I wear in a sea print. So this is all made out of coffee capsules and bottle seals, wine bottle seals. So these are stapled and sewn together with copper wire. And this is the other piece that
Could you hold the camera still just on one of those so we can see just what each individual object is?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Can you hold the camera still just on a section of the dress?
Yes, of course. Here you go. Like this. And here a little bit going down. They're kind of big and I don't have a lot of room here, so it's interesting. And I didn't figure out how to invert my camera so I could show you the space.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
So, but I can
No
hold the material.
Yeah.
So it's very light. It's all aluminum. And these ones are also aluminum. So these are coffee caps that I get from people who don't know how to recycle them. They donate the pieces.
That's interesting to me as well, because I'm not familiar with an aluminum coffee cap. That might be a Brazilian thing. Is it?
Actually, it seems like it's pretty big in Europe and in Latin America, I think.
Okay.
So it's, yes, Nespresso machines, that's it.
Uh-huh.
So it's a tiny bit. I have one here. I have a few. So this is a kind of element that I work with.
Oh,
and
I
so
see.
I open them, you see,
Yeah.
and I remove the coffee and I assemble them together. But I do also like other kinds of recycled materials, like the wine top of bottles.
Yeah.
And also coffee cans.
Fantastic.
So these kind of works, materials, I was thinking about them when I saw the work of Ella Natsui, which is the Ghanese contemporary African artist. And he works also with coffee top, liquor bottle tops, aluminum. And I found this material to be very versatile. So it's easily put together, assembled. It's very light.
Great.
And it's malleable. I mean,
It's malleable, exactly. And that's why I got the idea that they started looking like garments. And I was thinking about Brazilian outsider artist Bispo do Rosário when I started making these pieces, because they started looking like ceremonial mantles, like this one. So even if it's a wall piece, it's got a remnant of something that you might drape around your body. And from that, I started thinking, well, let's try and make a dress, for instance. So this was the first piece that I've made with that. So it was fashioned around a plastic mannequin. And then I got this idea of playing around with them and wearing them. So they're also very interesting to wear because they're not very comfortable and they kind of restrict the movement. So in the end, if I wear them as a performance, it's like as if the object is making the performance itself.
Yes.
And
well, that's fascinating. Thank you. It's great to stop in. It's a whirlwind tour of Brazil, and it's great that we got to stop into an artist studio as well. Really appreciate
thank you, Aaron.
So,
yes.
well, just to bring it back into Frederik's presentation, was there any influence of Vic's work on your work, or not consciously, possibly, or consciously?
From Frederik's presentation?
Yeah, for the artist Vic Moniz. Is there an influence?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I was thinking about it as he was talking about it, like the ephemerality of it. I like the transformation of materials and the fact that you can retransform continuously the same materials. So this is a way I can relate to his work, definitely.
But he wasn't a direct influence? It was just
no, he wasn't actually.
Okay, great. All right, I'll bring it back to you, Christina, to talk about this in the historic context and get into the institutions and things.
Sure.
I'm very interested in your, if there's any patterns or anything related to Brazil that relate to these artists.
Well, thank you, thank you, Sandra. That was great. I'm so glad that we're able to see something that's in Brazil outside of Gabriela's office. So it's nice to see your work and to be there as well. And your work is beautiful. It's hard not to think of Vic Moniz when I see that. But it's interesting to hear you say that it's not a direct influence. So that's good. I mean, I look at those pieces and I think that they should be in a fashion show as well as in an exhibition. I mean, I don't know how comfortable it is to wear, but I'm sure it'd be fun to try as an experiment.
There's definitely something about the playfulness of them, and that kind of relates to a little bit of Brazil's tradition of parading, carnival, and popular culture in general.
I have a question, but because also with Eleuthisica and
yes, the Parangolés.
Yeah, with moving into art and moving art away from just being static and on the wall, just living with it and wearing it and
playing around with it. Definitely, that's really something that I like to have in the work, and to have it be transformed even as it is worn by people or touched or handled. Definitely.
So, but I would just gonna get back to asking Frederik a question about his presentation. I wanted to ask you about the video. I mean, I know, and Sandra probably knows the video as well with Wasteland. I feel like that I can't stress enough how wonderful that video is to see, and highly recommend it. I don't know if Sandra, I imagine you've seen it as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's quite impressive. And I mean, garbage is a huge problem everywhere, but Brazil does have a very big culture of recycling. So there's a lot of people living off going to the wastelands and recycling things.
And that's what I thought was interesting to like as a correlation to your work of using recycled items and the idea right now that we're so focused on climate change and really wanting to do everything we can outside of making something beautiful. It's also doing something better for mankind, which I think is both good in, as your work shows, but also good in the sense of the wasteland video of the Muniz's wasteland. So, but getting back to Frederik and Gabriela to ask some questions, I wanted to quickly ask you guys, since we have a few minutes left, to kind of walk us through sort of your take on highlights in Brazil. I know that you could have a list of 1,000 things, but maybe give me, I don't know, your top 10, if you can think of them.
The top 5 each, maybe.
Maybe top 5. Let's limit to 5. You're right. Yuri, that's good.
Like places to go here?
Well, in an ideal world, if we were able to travel again, yes. Places to go. You were mentioning
But
about
specifically for art, if you're traveling just to see
Yeah,
art.
yeah, I understand. May I share here my the screen? I selected some places that I think are really you must go here. Pivot, it's this place now. They migrated to they are totally online. It's a residency place, and it's amazing the work they've done. Auroras, but specifically here in Sao Paulo, that definitely is undoubtedly the hub here in Brazil. Instituto Moreira Salles in Rio, and we also have in Sao Paulo and Minas Gerais. In Otim, you've probably heard, it's this open air museum. It's beautiful. And Frederik, have you been there?
I mean, this is, if I have to make a top 5, it's just this on number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, if you had just one to go in Brazil, I would say this one.
I went in December, finally. It's funny, actually, I wanted to go 4 years ago, but then unfortunately I had to apply for a job at this gallery, so I couldn't go. But it's worth flying to Belo Horizonte to go there. It's like an hour flight from Rio, I think, an hour, 2 hours.
Yeah.
And absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's in continuous transformation, because every time you go there, there is something new. They change something. There is a new pavilion, so it's beautiful what they've done there. It's just so sad that now nobody can go there.
Yeah, that's EU team is just amazing, and it's not. So what I heard is that it takes you if you really want to see it very well, you have to do it in 2 days. So it's kind of
2 days if it's not, there is not a lot of people, and if you have a guide.
Yeah.
But 2 days is enough to see everything.
Yeah, I did it in one. I rented one of these carts, so we could do it in 1 day. But we didn't see everything. But it's internet. I think this is globally known as one of the best art parks in the world.
Yeah.
And it was privately owned first, but what I heard is that for a lot of people that know a lot about art, they are blown away by the nature, and for people that are very well versed in nature, they're blown away by the arts. So,
yeah, because besides the art, the botanical there is amazing. I don't know how many thousand species they have there.
Yeah. It's really beautiful. So that's definitely my number 1. Worth the trip, worth going from the United States to Brazil just to see that.
Just to see it, yes, I would say that.
Yeah. So that's my top 5.
Yeah,
already.
And
so that's
Pinacoteca and MASP is very fast to say that about MASP. The interesting part of it, it's the easels.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Lina Bobardi.
Yeah, Lina Bobardi easels. So I think that's amazing. This display.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because there's so much history often behind the paintings, provenance and things. So that's fascinating.
What's interesting about this one, Gabriela, can I speak a little bit on this?
Yeah, sure.
So what I really like about MASP, I've been there several times. I always try to go to Brazil at least once a year. This year is going to be difficult. But MASP the building is designed by the architect Lina Bobardi. And she's an Italian-born Brazilian artist and designer, architect, mastermind. The director at some point of the museum was Lina Bobardi. The easels are also made by Lina Bobardi. So her idea, and actually I work with an artist, Isaac Julian, a British artist who just had who just finished his work as an homage to Lina Bobardi. And the easels are placed in the room. So there's not a linear understanding of art history. You walk in and you see works from the 1800s, 1900s, more contemporary art, all mixed in the room. And the other beautiful thing is, because I don't know if you can relate, but if you walk into a museum room, you see an artwork, and you don't know exactly who it is, you first look at the name of the artist, and then if you recognize it, it's like, oh wow, this is so beautiful. So with Lina Bobardi, if you go into the exhibition space, you are not distracted by anything other than what you're seeing and what you already know. So you're much more open to making your own connections within different times or art movements or in general.
Can I just interject one thing? Because with the list you're talking about in the institutions, I feel like it's impossible for me to talk about Brazil and never mention Oscar Niemeyer. I mean, for me, El Congreso Nacional, which I have a photograph, and the photographer and art dealer is actually with us now, Silas Famorse, and the photograph that I have is an interior photograph, black and white, and it's beautiful. And I feel like that to me is quintessential of
And here, before this place I told you, here it's in Copan, projected by Oscar Niemeyer.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's, I mean, I have the piece, and I would show you if I could turn this screen around, but I might have to. It might be difficult to do right now. Let's see if I can swing this. I mean, I don't know. Silas, do you want to join us? Do you have the photo? No?
No, because they're very big, so I do them per. I have a portfolio, but I will have to open it and take the camera.
Yeah, no. So
but I did go to Brasilia just to do the architecture of Oscar Niemeyer, which makes me want to go to Inhatim to discover you say Inhatim?
Inhotim.
I took a plane just to go to see Brazilian, the architecture of Oscar Niemeyer, so I could take a plane to go to Inhotim, yes.
Yeah, it's very close.
Yes. Oh, I wish I knew that. But I love Oscar Niemeyer. I mean, I spoke to his wife before he passed away, and I was very sad when he passed away.
No, because the architecture that he did is an artwork in itself, and there's so much architecture in Brazil that houses fine art, but it had the architecture is the art as well. So it's just it's interesting that you see both, and the institutions you're both talking about. I feel like the surrounding area is beautiful as well as the building. So one could get lost in just going to one of these places. I mean, I feel like I have to plan 15 different trips to Brazil. In the future. I actually had the opportunity to go to Art Rio years ago for work, and I missed the opportunity because of Zika. The outbreak was so bad, and I ended up not going, but I regret that. I wish I'd gone, because I've been dying to go to both Rio and Sao Paulo for years. So this has been a great introduction. And talking about Brazil, and makes me, add to my list of places to go. And I just wanted to say thank you for everyone for joining us today. And if you have any questions for me, I'm going to put my details in the chat, and let me know if you want to continue speaking to Frederik or Gabriela. But Frederik, Gabriela, thank you for joining us and having wonderful discussions. Very exciting. And to let you know that we'll probably be posting this on social media at a later date. And thank you everyone else for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Next stop in the art world will be Estonia. I'm not sure the date yet, but we're going to be sure to bring you some really wonderful people from Estonia the next time we do the show. And Christina, that was amazing. Thank you. And Gabriela and Frederik, fantastic to meet both of you. Really super excited by the artists you brought. I felt like the excitement that I felt about this first episode was well justified, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you so very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Till next time.
Bye.
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 Thank you.